quite exciting, just the format, the informality, feeling a little close, which is something we haven't felt for quite a few years now. And I hope that this session, it's about you. So please make sure that if we speak too fast, if it's not clear, if you have a question, it's much more interesting that you interrupt us rather than being pleased with ourselves and not talking all the time. But you could see, like, we can speak for ages. So it's more interesting that you please interrupt us and ask questions along the way. But it's a formidable occasion to have those three distinguished speakers with us today, with three different and complementary points of view to discuss how technology, and in particular artificial intelligence, is changing the life of children. It's a fantastic opportunity. It brings a lot of added value to the life of children, but it also brings risk, and therefore we have responsibilities towards those technologies and children, and that's what we're going to try to discuss today with three distinguished panelists. The first one is Lieutenant Colonel Dana Humaid, who doesn't need to be introduced somehow, because I think
Chief Rabbi, you made time for me.
Yes, hi, how are you?
Thank you so much. I'm very happy that you're here. Hi, Gadi.
Shalom.
Shalom. Hello, how are you?
Please join us. Sorry. This is very informal. Yes.
All right.
Yes, please go.
All right, let's continue.
Yes.
All right, fair enough. So let me just begin with a question, and I just want to stress how important it is to have Dana in the room, because she is probably the greatest model of how to translate police commitment into action. The police is always a neglected actor in child protection system. It's the actor we just ask in the end to implement whatever else we've decided. But in fact, in the life of children, they're one of the first person that is immediate in their circle. And this is where it's so important to make sure that the police is part of the discussion from the beginning. And Dana's commitment worldwide is unique and make the Emirates really a model in terms of how championing child protection in the policing world. So it's very fantastic to have her with us today. And maybe on this, I would ask the first question is related to the regulations. As you might know, around the world, there are more and more legislation that are being examined on how technologies needs to be regulated in a way that we can reconcile it with the right to privacy. And children have a right to privacy, but at the same time, they have a right to protection. And so at the moment, the sort of front line is on the European Union examining a new legislation in that regards. And the first question is to see how does that resonate in the Gulf region and especially in the Emirates?
In the previous decade, in the previous decade, there was a lot of regulation changes in the GCC. I think more needs to be done, but we need to keep in mind that technology is transformed faster than regulation system. In order for you to get a law out there in the open, it takes from 3 to 5 years of deliberation and of discussions and of consultation. And technology is changing on daily basis. So one of the things that we need to focus on, I think, not only in the GCC region, but overall in governments, is how can we expedite the process of informing the legislative system of the urgency of developing laws that govern technologies, especially those that have to do with combating online sexual exploitation of children. I think data protection is very critical, and I think it's something that needs to be represented in those legislations. It's a balance, it's a thin line between how much can you help a child and how much you need to protect their identity and how much you need to protect their criminal records, because once it's out there in the world and it's in the criminal record system, it's always there. Those victims are later survivors that needs protection and needs support early on from the reporting phase. In the United Arab Emirates, we've had legislations in place for over 12 years, even more. But recently, the government decided very wisely to elaborate on child's right importance in the United Arab Emirates. And we gathered all those laws in one law, which is the Wadima law. It's a child law that encompasses every single thing, and one of it is crimes against children in the technology world. I'm very proud to be someone in the Ministry of Interior who championed this law and who worked on this law, drafting this law. It is something that was done through years of thinking and deliberating. Data protection is a very integral part of this law, and I'm very proud to say that United Arab Emirates thought of this ahead of time due to the support from leadership and the understanding to the importance of technology, but also data privacy of human beings, especially children.
Thank you for that. And sorry? But it's for the camera. It's for the audio. Thank you. So let me introduce you to our second speaker, Mr. Irakli Beriz, who is the Executive Director, Director General, of the International Affairs Bureau. I'm getting all confused in my notes, sorry. Head of Center of Artificial Intelligence and Robotics at UNICRI, a specialized UN agency that works on such technologies. And maybe as a first question, if you could explain to the audience what's the Artificial Intelligence for Safe Children initiative and how it pioneers as well the field of developing ethics, protocol, and how to develop artificial intelligence in a way that is respectful for children's rights as well.
Thank you so much, Guillaume. And first of all, I'm really honored to be here in the United Arab Emirates at the World Government Summit. This is a flagship event, and I'm here third time, and very honored to be part of it. Very honored to be part of this panel with distinguished speakers, particularly with Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Humaid, who is, as echoing Guillaume's words, is a true global champion of innovation, drive and change, and I'm really honored to be partnering with you, Dana, and with your agency and with all your colleagues and teams in this regard, and everybody's so happy to work with you and with your government. Now, speaking with your question, AI for Safer Children is an initiative which we started in partnership with the Ministry of Interior of United Arab Emirates, and it envisages two aspects. One is to bring the light and visibility how artificial intelligence can support combating sexual exploitation and abuse of children online. And the second is to build a practical global hub where we will concentrate all knowledge, technology, tools, and learning resources for 193 United Nations member states and their law enforcement to enjoy direct benefits of it. The hub is already in the beta version. It's been built, and we have more than 40 tools available, with the tool providers already giving their consent to use the tools. We have, last meeting, over 60 countries participating, law enforcement agencies, 250 participants of 60 countries, and 95% of them committed to be part of the hub. In June, we're going to organize a larger event where we're going to bring all the law enforcement there, and this hub is going to serve them to use artificial intelligence in a way to support them in solving this particular crime area. And we are expanding this in what we call Hub 2.0, which will be translating into direct trainings to the law enforcement globally. It will provide innovative solutions through hackathons, which we are going to co-organize it together, as well as direct capacity building activities to the countries. Now, on the ethics and legal side, we implemented a special process within the initiative to make sure that the initiative is answerable to the, of course, UN Charter, Universal Principles of Human Rights, and all the associated principles which are there. We interviewed numerous experts, including law enforcement, including technology providers, ethicists, and others. And at the last meeting, we introduced a special paper. We are collecting now feedback. What is really important there is that we are making sure that we have a fair relationship with tech providers. All the tools which are presented there at the UN Global Hub is developed through the ethical principles, and we have a special process to select them through. We have global inclusiveness to ensure that widening global gap, technology gap, is not widened further, and the tools serving everybody equally in the world, gender mainstreaming, equality, and many other issues related to that on the hub.
Thank you. And I think this is a really important tool to be aware of. The ability to be able to make accessible those technologies to all police services around the world in many languages is really going to make a difference, so that it's a global problem. It needs a global response, not just in the Western world, really everywhere. So I think it's a really sort of exciting initiative in that regard.
We have already 9 languages. The hub is already translated into 9 languages, all 6 UN languages and some additional languages as well.
Including Arabic, of course.
Obviously.
So let me introduce you then to our third speaker, who is Ian Drennan, who is the Executive Director of We Protect Global Alliance. It's a very unique space, forum for discussion between the private sector, government, experts, civil society organization on the exploitation of children online, sexual exploitation of children online. So this makes this body quite unique in its convening capacity to bring different points of view together and trying to build for actions for better protection and prevention on sexual exploitation of children with technologies. So the question in relation to this as well is to see, in the past decades, we've seen a huge surge in the number of cases of child sexual abuse material. And this puts a lot of pressure, especially on law enforcement authorities, to be able to filter those cases and transform that into action, prosecution, prevention, and so forth. So the issue is, how can we reconcile the development that are happening in terms of technology with the human capacity to deal with it and bring actions into change?
Thank you very much, Guillaume. And We Protect Global Alliance, we are the largest, we're the most diverse network focused on finding solutions to and ending child sexual abuse online. And UAE have been with us right from the very, very beginning. And Lieutenant Colonel Dana is a permanent member of our board. And we've had this support right the way through. And we believe that the only way, no single entity can do this on its own. We need to come together to try and generate solutions. And looking at AI, I think it's one of the areas where that collaboration is needed most acutely. And I have a very personal interest in this because my youngest brother is a cop and he is dealing with these cases, day in, day out. And they need the tools to be able to do the job. And I think to answer this question, there are 2 reasons why AI plays a really important role. The first is operational. So the sheer volume of cases. So under US law, every company that's headquartered in the US is mandated to refer child sexual abuse material to a centre called the National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC. They just put out their report for 2021. 29.3 million referrals, of which 29.1 million were coming directly from electronic service providers. So it's not people who are using the service for the most part, it's companies who are providing that data. And that's coming in, that's only going to go up. EU are looking at mandatory reporting as well. So you've got law enforcement potentially drinking from a hose. They have such a huge amount of data that is coming their way that there is an imperative to use AI tools, to use that triage capability to work through and identify which are the most urgent cases. Where are the cases where there is direct danger to children? Where is there risk to life? Where are there people who need rescued? Because at the moment that's buried, and we need AI to ensure that those really important cases are able to rise to the top, because there are duplicates, there are memes, there are misguided attempts at humor. We need to get through all that and get to the serious cases. And the second reason, I think, is about well-being. It's about the morale of the officers who are looking at this material, because this material is damaging. If you look at it without the protections, without the psychological support in place, it will cause you harm. It will traumatize you. And so we want to ensure that the incredible operational leaders, the law enforcement officers who are looking at this material, see it as only when they absolutely have to. And that's where technology can help. Technology can ensure that human moderation, which will always be an important factor, is only used where it absolutely needs to be. And I think we've got a huge opportunity, as both of my co-panelists have said, through AI to work with human resources, not replace them, but improve the capability and enable us to get better outcomes.
Thank you. And allow me maybe to continue, Lieutenant Colonel, on this aspect. There is a challenge for police services around the world to manipulate those technologies to be able to address the magnitude of the problem, but also filter it, translate it into investigation, action in the field. That requires skills, human resources with skills, and many countries, and that's global, it's not just in the south, it's in the north, it's everywhere, are experiencing challenges in delivering on this. So what are the solutions to the adaptation required from the police to address those issues today?
First of all, I would like to thank Ian because he spoke about well-being of police officers, and I want to start with that in my answer. As police officers who work day in, day out, without the proper technologies in place and without using the proper technologies in space, you are going to be subjected to see every single image there is, to sift through a huge backlog. When you talk about NCMEC reports per country, they might reach up to 300,000 reports per country. That's a huge number of reports. Some of them are duplicates, and some of them, as Ian said, are memes. Some of them are not actually sexual exploitation images. So for a police officer to go through all of that in terms of identification, investigation, victim identification in specific, that is going to be a huge emotional burden on them. So with use of technology, we find that decreases the amount of stress that police officers go through. Just between 2019 and 2020, there was 106% increase in the reporting of child sexual exploitation online. During the pandemic, that's a huge increase, 106%. You're talking about images and videos of children who are 3 months old. We deal with that kind of images, 3 months old, victimized by their parents sometimes in some regions. You're talking about a serious issue that deserves a serious result. Now, with police forces, resources are limited, especially in some of the developing countries. They need a lot of support, and technology and AI would pose as a great solution for them. But we need to help them acquire those solutions. AI is very useful in the early identification of victims, during investigation, even during filing. And the more accurate your investigation is, the more you can bring people to justice, and the more you can identify victims, which is the whole point of using technology, really. But not everybody is lucky to have access to those technologies. That's why I'm very proud that we're partnering with UNICRI on AI for Safer Children. It is a platform that will be free of charge for more than 193 countries around the world. Most of them don't have access to technology. And through this hub, we are going to also build capabilities. This is what we have in plan. 50% of our activities in the coming few years will be building capabilities. That's very important. Some countries feel like building capabilities is providing a country with few computers, second-hand computers. But as I've seen in one of the countries in developing world, I've seen their child exploitation center, and it was 3 officers with 1 computer who has internet connection. And the amount of reports they swift through was 900,000 reports per month. That's not little. That's incredibly huge. But they don't have access to technology. So we hope that within the hub, with UNICRI, we will be able to support them, we will be able to introduce solutions to them, and we will be able to have an open conversation about what do they need really from us. Not second-hand computers, they need something more, and we need to identify that, and I think AI for Safer Children will help us do that.
Thank you. And Irakli, maybe as a follow-up question in that regards, the hub is an opportunity to showcase all the technological development that are there to facilitate the work of the police with hashing technique, with classifier techniques that allow to filter the material online to be able to ease the work of the law enforcement authorities. There are some inconsistencies in the level of development of different technologies. There's more advancement in image-based rather than in communication-based. And we know that the grooming technique using the sort of spaces on video games and social media to chat is a way that is increasingly being used to groom children, leading to sexual exploitation. But that requires a completely different types of technology to be able to address this problem. So how are we sort of balancing and using the current technological development to advance, yet sort of taking into account the different levels of development in those technologies?
Right. Thank you so much, Guillaume, for this question, and I will sort of continue how Lieutenant Colonel Ahmed left it off about bringing capabilities to the countries, which is so important. As when we were interviewing law enforcement officers, especially in the developing world, we found out that numerous countries did not know how or even if artificial intelligence can play a role, and they were so grateful to learn what were those techniques and how to use it. Will come in the second phase of this initiative, where we will directly be able to bring technology providers to them, facilitate that type of capacity building. Now, about the grooming and techniques. There are numerous techniques, and artificial intelligence has come long way. Last 10 years or so, we had an exponential growth of technological wonders in that regard, where we'll have numerous applications and tools to actually answer to the crime. Now, on the prevention side, obviously police comes in more on the sort of aftermath once the crime happens, and they will investigate it. There are numerous investigating tools. On the prevention side, we're doing several things. At our hub, we have around 20 tools which already have natural language processing capabilities, where in the spaces like gaming or social media or others can already identify a content and alarm law enforcement officers even before the crime occurs, so that they could be prepared, that they can already answer it. That type of techniques are extremely crucial, and the learning part, the delivering training part would be extremely crucial, because what we want to see is that entire world will enjoy benefits of this technology. So through the providing of the technology, through the understanding the exponential growth of AI, because what we expect in the next 3 to 5 years, AI is going to become a dominant technology for the law enforcement. No law enforcement agency in the world will be able to do any investigations without support of artificial intelligence, and this is absolutely true. With the proliferations of sensors and the sort of exponential growth of data, we will not be able to decipher data without support of the tools what we are having in place.
Thank you for that. And Ian, with Protect, you were in a unique position to also reconcile the technological development with also the accountability that it brings towards children. And we see more and more pressure being put legislatively, but not only, towards the private sector in order to make detection, reporting, removing of child sexual abuse material compulsory for the private sector. So where do we stand today? What are the progresses and remaining challenges for that accountability?
Thank you. I mean, I think there's a lot of progress that has been made. So we're seeing, we did a survey with our last global threat assessment of companies and trying to get a more transparent sense of what tools were being used. And there are, 87% of respondents were using image scanning software. 76% were using video scanning software, but only 37% were using software that identified grooming, so that prevention needs more work. We're seeing promising tools, so that the Google have a content safety API doing that prioritization, triage work that we spoke about. On age verification, we're seeing one of our members, Yoti, is able to estimate an age without sharing any personal data in 1 to 1.5 seconds. So there's been some incredible progress that's been made in terms of ensuring children are using age-appropriate services. We're seeing improvements to the NCMEC tip line process, so it's working more efficiently and more effectively. And we are seeing this growth in legislation, whether it be in Australia, in UK, in EU, coming down the track. We heard in UAE as well, looking at regulation of the online space, setting that baseline for companies to comply with. And it's something that companies are asking for themselves. But there are challenges. And I think one of the biggest challenges is that artificial intelligence, machine learning, it's only as good as the data that it's being trained on. And for that data training, you need to have excellent collaboration between governments and companies to allow the software to learn, to allow it to recognize material. And then also, finally, looking at that first generation imagery. So not matching to an existing database, but imagery material that's just been created. At the moment, that doesn't work as well. You've got more false positives. We need to be doing more research to improve that accuracy and make it more effective. But I think what I'd like to end on is there is a lot of progress being made. We are in a new era in terms of collaboration on artificial intelligence.
Thank you. It's exciting, but we still have a lot to do, but we've come a long way at the same time. Please.
Just would like to add that I'm very happy to be here, and especially with Colonel Dana, and continuing to work for child protection. There's one aspect of child protection which is, I don't know if it was so much to talk about, is bullying of children, which might be, according to law, less of a problem, but for children might be a problem as well. And we in the CER, and the Conference of European Rabbis, we're giving an annual CER Internet Application Prize for applications which make the world better. And there's one application which is called Keepers.com, which got our first prize in Munich in 2016. And since then, they have partnered with most first-tier telecom companies in Europe, and installing we're talking about prevention, not only about punishment. So it helps the parents to identify right away if there is of sexual exploitation or bullying of their children. So we're talking here about prevention as well as working with the parents before something happens.
Excellent, and I think it bridged very well in the sense that we need to be careful that we shouldn't be just reactive to the issue of sexual exploitation of children. We need to prevent it. And from that perspective, for instance, in terms of the law enforcement authorities, building units that are capable of tracking and tracing all of this is one piece of the puzzle, but the puzzle is much bigger than that. So it relates as well as to community policing. How are we engaging with caregivers, parents, families to make sure that they're part of the problem, but they're certainly part of the solution even more? So maybe in that sense, I would ask Dana to tell us a little more about sort of bridging sort of the specialized units in police services together with the community policing approach, how important it is, what works at the moment in that regard.
Let's start with children. They're the victims here. I've been engaged in combating sexual exploitation of children online for the past 8 years. I have attended numerous workshops, numerous conferences, numerous work groups. I'm part of a lot of boards where there is not even one child present. Not even one child present. In any board I sat on, in any conference I attended, in any workshop I attended, there was no children in the room. That's a big problem because you need to listen to children. We've tried something. We've tried an approach. It's a creative lab where you bring children. We brought children from ages 8 to 17 and from different schools and backgrounds and community cultures, and we put them in one room. And we asked them, do you understand sexual exploitation of children online? They understand. Do you understand you shouldn't give your information out to people? They understand. They still do it, but they understand. And the thing I walked out from, before we talk about specialized units, the thing I walked out from is something that a child said. We were talking about prevention. And he told me, you treat us like idiots. The posters you do, the short clips you do on social media, they talk to 3 years old. You put a sign, no for sexual exploitation of children, don't exchange information with strangers. They said we understand more. We're on the dark web. We are gaming. You need to change the way you do prevention for us. That is important. We need to listen to children. We need to understand what languages are they speaking in terms of conceptualizing the problem. And we need to create our prevention systems according to that. So I hope, and it's an invitation to everybody who works in this sphere, invite children into your boards, conduct workshops with them, talk to them about what you're developing, and an AI for safer children. I think we need to do that. We need to conduct a session for children. We need to bring them on board. We need to talk to them. And I think it's something that will be unique to us. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think let's do it.
No, I fully agree. I mean,
Let's champion what we preach.
Absolutely, I'm extremely sort of receptive to this idea, and certainly we can organize a special session to put it together, and it could be done here in the UAE, or it could be done in the Hague.
Yeah.
It could be done online.
Yes.
We bring different children from different parts of the world, but it is absolutely doable.
Now, on unique and specialized units, there's an example that I'm very proud of. We shouldn't toot our own horn, but I'm very proud of this example. Lieutenant Colonel Abdulrahman Al-Tamimi is here. He's the director of Child Protection Center in the United Arab Emirates. A couple of his team members are here. I'm very proud of them. They're hardworking people who work day in, day out on sexual exploitation of children. So within their center, they have prevention, they have victim care, they have auditing of reports, they have reporting. So they created a structure that encompasses the whole process. We're very happy to share this structure with a lot of people, and we work with a lot of people to try to show them what we've done and the results. Because at the end of the day, you can create a lot of specialized units and a lot of centers, but if you can't show your results in numbers, I think that's only hearsay.
Excellent. And I think we're reaching the point where children often know more than we do about the issue. In general, research have demonstrated that they're much more versatile with technology than their caregivers. So it means it's not anymore just nice to have, they're needed. We need them to understand the challenges and make sure that the solution we devise as adults match their realities, their needs, and their perception. So that's really sort of one of our challenge, to make sure that everything becomes much more child-friendly in that sense. And yeah, you want to say something on this? Yeah.
Well, I think just building on that, and picking up on your question, sir, I think children are seeing this as a whole. So we are looking at it from our, we focus on child sexual abuse online, but that cannot be a silo. That needs to be connected with how is that connected with bullying? How is that connected with other forms of online harm? How is that connected with violence against children that's happening offline? So we know that 37% in a survey in Finland of offenders who are looking at abuse material online had tried to approach a child offline. So we need to, while using the expertise and the knowledge that we have, we can't be creating these little niches. We have to take a wider view and listen to children who are those digital natives. I'm just a digital immigrant. They are the natives. They speak the language.
Maybe I can just add something, fully echoing what's been said here, and about the children being digital natives. Children live very comfortably in virtual worlds, and now what we call metaverses, which there are several metaverses which will be merged in other type of metaverses, and for children this is a very normal existence. And Chief Rabbi was talking about bullying, and fully agree with that. that issue has to be addressed. A lot of bullying is happening online. Most of the bullying for children is happening among each other online, and it will be translated into those metaverses. And what we're trying to do with the AI for Safer Children initiative is to bring in the metaverse inside this initiative to see how children can be protected in those virtual worlds where their existence is actually sometimes equal to the real world existence as well. They have their identity, they have their presence, they're there, they are creating things, and in the future they will be creating a lot more. So those environments need to be absolutely protected.
And maybe a question to the three of you. One of the challenge, recognizing that children are more and more agent of their experience online, means as well that it's challenging us, the adults, in the way we perceive victimhood. It's much more easy for us to stereotype the child as just being really sort of groomed and abused, and that reflects part of the realities. But many children have also played a certain role at some point in that experience. They might have consented to some form of it. They might have shared images that were illegal. They might have facilitated even the exploitation of others. And that's very challenging to us, in the way that we would rather have them completely from top to the bottom being just a victim of it. But sometimes they were also in conflict with the law in their reaction, and that's really sort of a challenge legally, but also socially, in how to react to the complexity of the experience that children have online. So I don't know if that resonates to some of the challenges and realities you've said, and if you want to add something on this. Ian?
So we've been doing a lot of work with survivors of abuse, and I think completely agree with what you say, Guillaume, about understanding that full breadth of experience. But I think what I like to emphasize is that the trauma is real. There's been a study done in Sweden matching up the symptoms of trauma between sexual violence offline and someone suffering abuse online. And they were the same. In terms of the effects on psychology, they were absolutely the same. So this is not just because something's happening on a screen, it doesn't mean that it's not causing real trauma and real harm. But I think we need to listen to survivors. They know what the experience is. They know what the risks are. They know what the challenges are. So I think in the same way we need to engage children, I think we also need to bring in those people who know more than anyone about what the nature of this crime is.
I think victim care, if it's done right, it does help. We've seen a survivor in Ethiopia. Remember, there is an incredible civil society organization, IGM, and they work in the Philippines. And we've seen one survivor who ended up becoming a lawyer to champion combating sexual exploitation of online. So when victim care is done correctly, when there is a whole system around it, from government to private sector to health care, to physical health care and to psychological health care, when we work with civil society, when we work with programs that help us rehabilitate those children, it does work. Now, an image and video, when it goes online, it's going to stay forever online. That's a footprint you cannot delete. So this victim can be re-victimized with their knowledge or without their knowledge on daily basis as long as they live. So just understanding the severity of that should be reflected in each one of our work, whether it's advocacy, whether it's investigation and detection, whether it's development of technology. And I think with artificial intelligence and with AI for Safer Children, using the right tools will help us decrease that, and hopefully will help us with us bringing on board also civil society, and we're very happy to have them on our board. That perspective will always be there, and it will help guide us into dealing with the aftercare of child victims.
Thank you, and I'll just add a few things here. AI for Safer Children initiative is about stakeholder cooperation. When we created together with Dana, together with the Ministry of Interior of United Arab Emirates, this initiative, we thought to bring all stakeholders, all relevant stakeholders on board. your organization is part of the advisory board among with 20 other very relevant international players in this. We want to bring technology providers, government, academics, civil society, children, victims, and everyone else to ensure that tools are designed properly and efficiently, to ensure that preventive actions are taken properly and effectively, to ensure that law enforcement agencies everywhere in the world are equally equipped with the technology, with knowledge, with training, with understanding and capacity to answer that, to ensure that there are no safe havens for perpetrators. It is so important to have that global approach and the stakeholder approach because of this. Otherwise, if half of the world will be equipped and another half not, all the crime will move there. That's why we need a global approach. That's why we need that type of fluidity. And once again, I would like to thank this government. I'd like to thank Dana. When we look around, the World Government Summit is all about innovation, all about future, and what AI for Safer Children initiative intends to create is about innovation, it's about future, and it's about safer future for our children who are our future.
Thank you. And I don't know, maybe in terms of time, how are we doing?
Let's take questions.
Absolutely. Please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lieutenant Colonel Abdurrahman Tamimi from the Ministry of Interior, United Arab Emirates. My question is, this panel should have somebody from industry, because we need to talk about industry. Okay, what we know is a lot of crimes against children are done through, platforms, whatever they are. And industry, they're doing their part in just reporting. But what are they doing in preventing? We're talking about the hub and the provision of, tools, very advanced tools, but they come with a cost. A lot of countries cannot afford that cost. Who is going to pay for that? I think industry has to be paying part of that cost because they are a part of the problem. Otherwise, shut down, because the crimes are taking place on their platforms, and all they do is they report. And then what is the solution? We tell everybody, okay, these are the tools, and we know the tools. They are very expensive in a lot of countries. They cannot afford them. What is industry going to do about it? Are they going to pay a part of that cost? Are they going to cover that? Because they are a big part of the problem. If we didn't have these platforms, we wouldn't have this problem to start with. Yes, we have child abuse, of course, but online child sexual exploitation has exploded because of all the platforms and services online. So we need to ask about that. What are they doing about it? And this is my question.
I can comment on this and fully agree with you. Of course, we need to work with industry, larger platforms as well, for them to fully understand, realize, and actually admit that they could be part of the problem of this as well, and become part of the solution as well. Now, on the AI for Safer Children initiative, we have, as I said, around 40 tools already, technology providers who are delivering tools. Some of them are expensive and will be probably difficult to be afforded by the developing world. What we are trying to do is that we are working with them to ensure that they could provide some part of the tools to the developing countries free of charge. And we do have some positive reactions on that. We also are working with some interested groups, and I don't want to announce it now, but there are some who are interested to actually subsidize that type of work, where they could actually subsidize the part of the cost for the developing countries as well, because the idea of the initiative is actually that everybody enjoys those tools. And finally, on our platform, on AI for Safer Children, we have tools which are free of charge as well. And these are quite advanced tools which could be enjoyed by everyone, but not everyone knows how to use it. That's why we created a learning center as part of the platform, to ensure that those who don't know how to use it or don't know the benefits will get a first-hand, step one to the end training and understanding very clear way how to use those tools, because this is really important. Otherwise, you give a very advanced tool to a country who don't know how to use it, and then you just put it on the shelf and you don't use it, and you just continue the old practices. While when you deliver a training and hands-on understanding how to do it and clearly demonstrate the benefits, they will start using it, and that's when you make a real change.
And so I think because we have technology round the table at our alliance, I think offering another perspective, it's that, yes, completely agree, they need to be part of the solution in terms of dealing with the problem that we have, But then taking a step back, they can play an incredibly important role in terms of prevention, in terms of how they design their services from the outset, because it's always cheaper, more efficient to build these things in right from the beginning. So the example I always use, thinking about counterterrorism. Now you have in stadiums you have the barriers outside the stadium. They're built in from new stadiums. They build them in already. We need to have the equivalent of that online. It won't stop everyone, but it will dramatically reduce the cases, and it's the companies who have the power to build in those barriers and solutions. And I think also I went to a talk yesterday about the future, and it said, technology is a great tool, but it's a bad emperor, and it's about governments playing that role in mediating the online experience, setting the rules of the road, being active in regulation, and then setting for the companies, this is what you need to do in terms of, if you want to provide services in our territory, this is what you need to do.
I think both Irakli and Ian covered most of what I wanted to say, but I just want to acknowledge something. I'm someone who's never satisfied with what technology companies do. Maybe people disagree with me. They're doing what they can, but they're not doing enough. When car companies create cars, they put safety belts on them, but all those platforms, I don't feel they have safety belts on them for children. I don't. Maybe there is something in place and some technology companies are doing more than other technology companies, but more needs to be done in grooming. Grooming needs to be addressed with artificial intelligence as soon as possible, because that's the beginning of all evil. And grooming is happening in gaming and happening on this platform. So just a metaphor, just like we build safety belts in cars, technology industry needs to build safety belts for children on their platforms.
And if I may, I think if we look back in the 90s, the issue of sexual exploitation of children in travel and tourism, there was much resistance from that industry as well. But then there were codes of conduct that brought the airline companies, the hotel, the tour operators on board, and now it's seen as a positive thing. It's a label to be on the good side of the story, to showcase that your business in travel and tourism is actually protective of children. In the 2000s, you've got the Financial Coalition on the Sexual Exploitation of Children that also sort of pioneered that discussion with banks, with credit card companies, with cryptocurrencies today, and also seeing how the financial sector can and have responsibility and can play a role in supporting child protection. I think the conversation with the technology firms are only starting. There is still much resistance, but the tide is changing. There's also a desire to be on the good side of the history there. And so we must use a lot of communication strategy in that regards, because nobody wants to be responsible for sexual exploitation of children. And because those companies are so sensitive about their reputation, we must sort of build a positive story about the regulation of the industry, and that's actually, I think, the movement that we're building on at the moment. More questions? And we need to... Thank you. I hope it was interesting. You see that you can continue talking with us for quite a while on this, much to be said, but thank you for paying attention to this discussion, and let's continue to bring leadership from this country on this issue globally. Thank you. Shukran. Thank you to the three of you.